So good afternoon and welcome to EAC. I have a couple housekeeping things to remind you of. So you should have the screen in front of you, and if you don't have the materials, you can click on the link there to gather the materials for the call. We have a very busy agenda today, so we're really excited about sharing with all of you. If you have a question, remember to use the raise the hand icon, and then we will introduce you and unmute your microphone to ask your questions. And a pop-up window will come up on your side and ask you to unmute. And then we will mute your microphone and lower your hand when you're done speaking. And let's see what else. I got to make sure I go through all my notes. And then our facilitators will have time to respond to questions. So feel free to ask them any questions you have. And if we're ready, we can go ahead with the next screen. So here is our agenda for today. And we're going to start the meeting with an update from Sheila Lee on the Employer Learning Center.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Lee, and I'm here with some updates on the Employer Learning Center. For short, that is ELC. ELC is our learning management system. And so with that, I'll go ahead and dive in, and I'll start by screen sharing. And if I can please get a confirmation that we are, in fact, seeing the employer support portal, that would be wonderful. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So once again, my name is Sheila Lee, and for the Employer Learning Center, I'll go ahead and start off by showing what it looks like. For the Employer Learning Center or Learning Management System, it can be accessed at training.calstrs.com. Or if you want to explore, say, for example, the Employer Support Portal or One-Stop Shop, you may go ahead and do so and navigate to the Employer Learning Center that way as well. For my folks that are not familiar with either the Employer Support Portal or the Learning Management System, our Employer Learning Center, ELC, we do have some tools and resources available to you. And so I would like to direct your attention to other job aids. Other job aids showcase a variety of job aids, but the one I would like to point out is the Employer Learning Center account instructions. And so if you do not already have Employer Learning Center account, you may go ahead and create one in order to access all of our training material. And if you need assistance, please go ahead and see the job aid. And this is what that job aid looks like. Now, just to dive into the Employer Learning Center itself, to go over those updates. For the Employer Learning Center, what you see here on the screen is the Teachers Retirement Law training materials. Previously, it was just this. We have broken it up into two sections. And so we have instructor-led trainings as well as self-guided materials. And so what you're going to get from the instructor-led trainings are the course materials that we cover within our in-person training as well as our webinars. Notice on this page, we have county all employer types. We broke it down by employer specific as well as what you'll see here, topic specific. And so I just want to do a brief demo on county all employer types. And so I already have it up just in case my internet will not load. And so this is what it looks like. For our county all employer types, you're going to see an introduction. Notice that there is a revised date. So anytime any of the materials within the course are updated, this revised date will also be updated. For our trainings, specifically, anything that's instructor-led ILT, we're going to request employers to take the pre-training assessment to see what information do they know prior to taking the training. And then you'll see later down on this page, there is a post-assessment as well. But what we've updated for this specific course is to include recommended courses such as credible service, defined benefit membership, as well as credible compensation. We continue to include related laws specific to credible service. related documents, minimum requirement resources, and we used to call these training guides, but we decided to rebrand, rename, and so they're all called presentation slides. So these are the presentation slides that we provide at the time of training in person and or webinar. So you may go ahead and access these to follow along during our trainings. This is where we cover defined benefit membership, as well as credible compensation. Now, I mentioned earlier that there is a training prerequisite section, and within that section, there is a post-training assessment, and this is something that we would talk about in our training. So this is a demo of our instructor-led section. I do want to go over the other section, which is self-guided materials, and these are CBTs. And so if you want to go at your own pace, see what is out there without having to go to in-person training or attend a webinar, this is your best bet to go to self-guided materials. So with this one, these are the courses that we offer. Notice that there is this button here. For you, you might see something different, and that would be perhaps an Enroll Me button. With the Enroll Me button, that allows you to get access to everything within the course. Please note my view may be different from yours, but that's what you would need to do in order to get into these courses. And so that's pretty much what I have to share in regard to the Employer Center, Learning Center updates. The biggest thing is really just dividing it into two sections. And those two sections are, excuse me, let me go ahead and go back to the main page. The two sections are instructor-led training versus the self-guided materials. And so if you have any questions in regards to the updates made to the Employer Learning Center, please feel free to contact employertraining@calstrs.com. And with that, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Sheila. It doesn't look like we have any questions. So we're going to move on to our next topic, which is the Pension Solution Project update from John Hammond.
Great. Thanks, Kathleen. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Hammond with Employer Readiness Team, and I just have a quick Pension Solution Project update for you. Can we move to the next slide? So here's a high-level schedule for the next couple months. It probably looks pretty familiar to some of you, but I thought it'd be a good idea to just run through this together, see if there's any questions, make sure that we're on the same page. Regarding the red line, I think you all know by now that the employer readiness environment is available now. That's where you can go to experience a production-like new SO environment. It also provides the opportunity to upload files in the new system, give you a chance to see some of the new business rules that are working, some of the new functionality, and you can do all this now if you like, whenever you like. You just need to reach out to the Employer Readiness Team and we'll help you get the access that you need. Regarding the orange line, the Employer Readiness Team is completing another round of readiness visits with report sources. And so if you are a report source and you haven't scheduled your readiness visit with us yet, I just encourage you to do so. Our goal is to meet with all report sources before the calendar year ends. So please reach out to us, and the next slide will be our contact information. So I'll address it then. Well, let's not go there just yet. Thank you. Regarding the Blue Diamond, there will be an upcoming employer readiness webinar to discuss readiness activities leading up to go live. So that's kind of like our T-minus 12 months month right there, is this coming October. And so the audience that we're looking for that webinar are report sources, districts and charters that are currently submitting enrollments through SO, and partial file uploaders. So that's who we're looking for to attend this October webinar. And that's where we're really going to answer a lot of your questions about what are expectations of you during the 12 months leading to go live, I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions to ask. That's really where we're going to address all that. If you happen to miss that, we're going to be posting a recording on the employer support portal. So even if you miss it, you'll be able to catch the information that we're sharing at that time. We don't have a date yet, but you can expect one here soon. Regarding the green line, that's the final file validation period. We'll explain this more during that October webinar. That's really what the main topic we're going to be discussing. But if you'd like a preview of kind of what that conversation is going to be like, you can read the new success criteria testing guide, which is on the employer support portal. Right now, it's under the toolkit, and you can find that, read that. It just lays out a number of expectations that we'll be talking about in October. All right. And then regarding that Black Diamond, that is the new go live. So that date is still to be expected. It's going to be in fall of 2025. We don't have a specific date as of right now, but we will. And it's just a matter of the project maturing and completing their tasks to make sure that when we do give you a date for go live, that will be the date, right? Let's go to the next slide, and then I'll entertain any questions if you have any. These are some of our primary communication channels, the employer support portal. There's project announcements. There's project materials there to help you in the employer readiness environment. Sheila just shared the Employer Learning Center where you can take computer-based trainings. And of course, the employer readiness environment is access can be accessed from there. To schedule a readiness visit, or if you have any questions about the project at all, you can always email psemployerreadiness@kelsters.com. My team is monitoring that all the time, and we're getting back to folks very quickly. And so please, you got any questions, send them that way. And we'll take care of you. But that ultimately is all I have to share today. But if there's a few questions, we do have some time to address those now.
It looks like we do have a question from
Great.
Deep. Can we open her mic?
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
I just have a quick question. You mentioned the October webinar for the report sources. So we're a community college, but the County Office of Education does the reporting for us. However, we are doing all the system setup and sending a completed file to the county to upload. So I'm just wondering, is there going to be something else for districts like us who can also be involved in that webinar so that we can make sure that our systems are updated and the programming changes that need to be made are done correctly and we stay on the time schedule as you guys are expecting?
Yeah, absolutely. The webinar is for you.
Okay.
That's something that you would want to tune into and listen. We're going to answer a lot of the questions that relate to your kind of situation at that time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, great, Kathleen. Thank you. Thanks to everybody. Have a good day. And again, any questions, come and send them our way.
Thank you, John. So next up, we have Karen Guthrie, who's going to speak to us about Senate Bill 765.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Karen Guthrie, and I work in the Service Retirement Division, and specifically I work with the post-retirement workload. So I'm here today to discuss the changes we see as a result of Senate Bill 765. It has made some changes to the post-retirement limitations. Just as a reminder, the limitations include the post-retirement annual earnings limit, as well as the required 180 calendar day separation from service period. And also, as a quick reminder, as an employer who retains the services of a retired CalSTRS member, you are required to inform the retirees of these limitations, as well as provide monthly reporting of their compensation. And we do ask that the reporting is submitted timely so that we can get out the required correspondences to our members to keep them updated on excess earnings and financial consequences of returning to work. So anyways, SB 765 is in effect. It began implementation on July 1st of 2024, and it's due to sunset on June 30th of 2026. So let's move to our next slide, and we will look at some of the changes that we are seeing as a result of SB 765. So one change is to the post-retirement annual limit, specifically to how we calculate that limit. Previously, the calculation for the annual limit was based on 50% of the median final compensation of retirees from the previous calendar year. So with SB 765, that calculation is increased from 50% of the median final compensation to 70%. You can see here on the slide, I have the current annual limit for fiscal year 24-25, that's $74,733. And then we can see what last year's was without the change, and that was, $50,655. Again, this is a temporary increase while the SB 765 is in effect. So let's go ahead and look to the next slide to see what other changes we're going to see. In addition to the annual limit, it is SB 765 is impacting the way employers will put an exemption request in. And on here, we can see that SB 765, it is going to be making some changes. However, many of the requirements for an exemption still remain the same. So as before, CalSTRS must receive the exemption request prior to the member returning back to work. The retiree must still be of normal retirement age. The retiree cannot have had any financial inducement to retire. The appointment must be for to fill a critically needed position, and the retiree's termination cannot be the basis for the critical need. And while I have your attention on these maintained requirements, I kind of want to point out with regard to financial inducement, this is a broad term, but it's not just referring to the CalSTRS retirement incentive. It could be any payment that is given to the retiree, and it may or may not be cash, but if this payment is in relation to their retirement, that could be a financial inducement. Also, I want to point out that the requirement where the retiree's termination cannot be the basis for the critical need, we use the word termination interchangeably with retirement here. So in a nutshell, basically, the retiree or the member retiring cannot be what caused this critical need for the employer to acquire their services. So now that we've seen what's staying the same, let's go to the next slide to see what has changed. Thank you. So new requirements that have resulted from SB 765, the first one is that employers cannot have had a reduction in force pursuant to these particular section codes or any other similar state laws within the prior 18 months. This is for any layoff, not just specific to this request for a particular position and a particular member. So this would be any layoff within the past 18 months. And then whether or not the school comes back and rehires the person, that's not going to change things. If the layoff occurred, then the employer, due to the new requirements of SB 765, would not be eligible for an exemption. And even to clarify a little further, 18 months, it's a date to a date for 18 months. So if, for example, let's say the employer is signing the form on August 15th of 2024, that 18-month period goes back to February 15th of 2023, just to kind of give you an example. And the other new requirement that we see as a result of SB 765 is that the employer is now required to provide a written copy of the completed documentation that it substantiates their need to bring back a retiree. They need to provide this information to the exclusive representative of the employees, so basically the union. If your school is not unionized, there'll be something on the form. We've accounted for that on the new exemption form to allow you to indicate that you are not. Notably, absent from this requirement is now you no longer need to provide an approved board resolution. So that was also one of the changes resulting from SB 765. So let's look at the next slide to see how we've incorporated these changes into the revised form for the exemption request. Thank you. So here I've just kind of done a couple little snippets of what the new form looks like. The form SR 1897 still has the same form number, but it has a new revision date. So this form has a revision date of July 24. If you are using any other form, we would reject the request. We do have to have the request on this new revised form because this form is the one that has been created to account for the changes with SB 765. We've added some questions too to make sure that we're gathering enough information so that when we analyze the request, we can make sure that all the exemption requirements are met. By law, there is a required 180-day calendar day separation from service period, and in order to meet this narrow exemption, these requirements must be met. That's so that we can keep our tax exempt status. So we need to do our due diligence to make sure that we're analyzing the request correctly. And then even though you may fill out the form completely, if we still have questions, we may reach out to you to provide some additional information. For example, we might say, hey, we need a copy of the person's previous contract, as well as a copy of the new contract so that we can compare the duties that are being performed. All right. Again, we will only accept the form with the revision date of July 2024. So if we go to the next slide, we can also see some further changes to the form. So on this slide, you see the section 4 for the certification. We have added the 2 new requirements regarding the no layoffs pursuant the specific section codes within the past 18 months. And we also have added the section where you will be certifying that the employer will provide documentation to the exclusive representative of the employers. And then here is where I mentioned, in the event that you do not have representation, you would mark that last one where it says, or we do not have exclusive representation. This section 4 and section 5, which is where the employer and the member will be signing, those must be completed for the appointing authority portion, must be completed by the required appointing authority. So what that means is the persons for sections 4 and 5 would have to be the superintendent of the district, not superintendent of HR, but the superintendent of the district, the county superintendent, the chief executive officer of a community college, or the executive director of the charter school. So these are the required appointing authorities that would be completing sections 4 and 5. Since this form is being signed under penalty of perjury that you're providing the information true and accurate, we do require wet signatures, or basically, in other words, we cannot accept an electronic signature. That's for section 4, where you're initialing, we want real initials. And then in section 5, where the signatures, again, we cannot accept electronic signatures or a stamp. We need to have it signed by the member and the appointing authority. And then let's take a quick look at the last slide and for a quick little wrap up. So when completing an exemption request, please be sure you're using the correct form. The only one we will accept is the one with the revision date 7 of 24. Please be sure the form is completed in its entirety. And please be sure that the required appointing authority is the one completing sections 4 and 5 and no electronic signatures. And then the best way to get the forms to us is to use the post-retirement email address, and I have it here on the slide. You can submit through the secured employer website, but then that usually involves another party. So for a faster response, it's best to send it directly to the post-retirement email box. This new form is available on the secured employer website. If you do not have access to the support you're welcome to email me at the same post-retirement email, and I will be happy to send you a copy. The form is not on calstrs.com. Since this is an employer-driven request, we don't have it on the .com because it's not available to the members. All right, any questions?
Yes, we have Ramona.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Ramona.
The portion where it says that the retiree cannot have received any financial inducement to retirement is employer paid benefits. So it's available to everyone. Say if you've worked at the agency for 10 years, you can have retirement, the health in retirement for 5 years or 2 years or whatever. Is that considered? Because it's not if you retire, we'll give you this. It's something that's available to anyone who retires.
We would probably like to look at the contract to see how it's written. And in that way, if there's any questions, we could go to our government relations and legal to get further information on that. So I don't want to just say straight up yes or no, but the best way would be to provide contract to us to see if that would be something that would fall under the financial inducement.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, we have one more from Letty.
Hi.
Hi, Letty.
Hi. Section 4 of the form requires completed documentation that substantiates the need for the exemption. What documentation do we need?
So the paperwork that you were completing to CalSTRS to request the exemption, you can use that paperwork to give to the exclusive representation. That's just letting them know that you are requesting to bring back a retired CalSTRS member.
So it's just the SR 1897 form, that's all we need?
Yes, you can give that to them. That alerts them to what you are requesting.
And this has to be given to the union?
Yes.
The union president, or I don't understand.
Whoever the union representative is for the school district.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
So next up, we have more legislation to speak to. And we have our Samantha Kesner to talk about Assembly Bill 1997.
Thank you, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
Okay, everyone. So I'm going to talk to you about legislation that has not yet passed, but is currently in the legislature right now. So it's currently in the Senate and is moving along. And so we're hoping that it will be passed by the end of the year, but we wanted to give you a heads up about it. Just in general, it's CalSTRS sponsored, and we did it in conjunction with the union representatives and employer groups. So we wanted to give you an early heads up about it and just let you know sort of where it's coming from and the goals of the legislation, and give you a brief overview. So next slide. So just a bit of background. As we're all, I'm sure, very aware, CalSTRS law and requirements are very complex. And this complexity, as again, I'm sure we're all aware, does increase reporting issues and audit findings. And so AB 1667, which is the legislation that was passed
and put into law a couple years ago was really meant to mitigate that impact on the back end. So once the reporting's already been, handled, and what happens if there's an overpayment or an underpayment, and not letting the members be harmed when that happens, that was really the goal of AB 1667. And so AB 1997 was, the point of that was really to address the complexities and try to mitigate impact to employers and members and CalSTRS staff on the front end. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Next slide, please. So the goals, as I said, is to reduce the complexity of our credible compensation and our credible service requirements, and the hopes of reducing reporting issues and reducing the number of benefits that end up being underpaid or overpaid. And while we were trying to attain those goals, we wanted to make sure that we kept an actuarially sound plan, and also that we maintain similar benefits for all of our members. So we're not taking anything away from our members that we currently offer as far as our benefits go. So next slide, please. So I'm going to break this down in about 4 major parts of AB 1997. I'm not going to get into the details of the bill in this. We'll have definitely a whole implementation effort, and I'll talk to you at the end about some next steps for the legislation so that you know what to expect. But this is, again, just a really simple overview of kind of what's in the bill and getting you guys used to the changes that are coming down the line. So part 1 of AB 1997 is to consolidate the retirement formulas. So we have the 2% at 60 retirement formula, we have the 2% at 62 retirement formula. And as far as credible compensation goes, we want to consolidate the retirement formulas. So that means eliminating the paid in each pay period requirement for the 2% at 62 members, and then also eliminating the compensation that's being reported directly to DBS. So right now, all limited term payments for 2% at 60 go directly to DBS, and so we'll be eliminating that requirement. And then also for 2% at 62, as far as limited term payments, right now, as you know, they're not at all creditable, but this would allow a place for those to go with AB 1997. But we will be maintaining the compensation limits for 2% at 62, so we're not completely consolidating everything about them, just as far as credible compensation goes and what's considered creditable. Next slide, please. So for part 2 is simplifying credible compensation overall, and we're going to be doing this by creating 2 different buckets. So we'll have a base pay bucket, which will include everything that is salary and special pay. And then the second bucket will be what we're calling supplemental pay, and that will be basically all the other compensation that you're paying someone that isn't salary and isn't special pay and isn't explicitly excluded. So again, it's a little complicated, which is why we're trying to ease you into these kinds of terms and changes. So those are the 2 major buckets that we'll be simplifying the reporting into. So for base pay, it's mostly what you're used to. So it's the pay that you're being paid for being employed up to the full-time equivalent in a position subject to membership, which is another new term that we'll be getting into in a later slide. And then it has to be paid in accordance with a publicly available pay schedule or a publicly available agreement. I know right now we're all used to the publicly available written contractual agreement, and so we kind of tried to shorten that, and we intend on doing regulations to really define what needs to be included in those documents so that it's very clear and cut and dry for everyone. And then it has to be paid to all persons in the same class of employees, which we're familiar with, and then be regular and recurring, which is really what PEPRA was meant to do. So those are the requirements for base pay, which again includes salary and special pay. So then I'll talk to you about what supplemental pay is on the next slide. So supplemental pay, again, is a new bucket, a new term. It's brand new, and it again includes all other types of compensation that are not expressly prohibited. So the things that are expressly prohibited are the things that we all know are prohibited today. Car allowances, fringe benefits, things like reimbursements and things like that. So those are expressly prohibited and would still not be considered credible compensation post AB 1997. But all the other compensation that a member is paid would now go into the supplemental pay bucket that is not salary, again, and not special pay. So that supplemental pay bucket, it will not be used to calculate compensation earnable or final compensation, but it will increase the total service credit up to 1 year of service. So like today, after you earn 1 year of service, anything else you're earning, a member is earning during that school year would be transferred to DBS. And so that rule will stay the same, but there'll be more we're expecting in the supplemental pay bucket. So members will be able to increase their total service credit if they're part-timers or if they had doc during the year, something like that, and they didn't quite get their full year, they would have the opportunity with supplemental pay to increase that total service credit up to 1 year of service for any one school year. And then this is very, very exciting. So all member contributions will stay in DBS. There'll be no more return of excess for member contributions. So employer contributions, there will still be a return of excess, but as far as those little pennies and nickels that you guys have to send out each year on excess member contributions, that is going away with AB 1997. So we're all very excited about that. Next slide, please. So part 3, we're also looking to remove the inconsistent special pay types. So like I said, we really wanted all the base pay, which again includes salary and special pay, to be regular and recurring. So some of those things don't quite fit that bill, such as the availability of funds, which is usually a one-time payment because the district got some extra money, or lottery payments and things like that. Payments contingent on hiring, transfer, or retirement. Again, those are usually a one-time payment given because someone was just hired or are retiring. And then the class size overload payments, again, are not regular and recurring. They only happen when you have a certain number of kids in your class. And so those are, we wanted to remove from special pay and really focus in on just those things that are regular recurring payments. And so they won't be non-creditable, but they'll be supplemental pay in post AB 1997. So they'll still be creditable for everyone. They're just going into a different bucket. So next slide, please. So part 4 is to create positions subject to membership, which is a term that I alluded to in the earlier slide. So right now we have creditable service, which is all the duties that someone is doing, and we look at their employment and who they're doing them for, and then we decide whether that's creditable service or not creditable service. So we're coming up with a new term, which is position subject to membership. And so we'll be looking at the position as a whole, and not you guys and us will not have to look at all the duties in order to decide whether something is a creditable position to us. We're working on the definition of that and obviously go into more detail of what that looks like, but we're looking at having that already documented somewhere ahead of time so that it's clear for us and it's clear for all the employers what is a position subject to membership, and that way we won't have to have a subjective sort of run through the list of duties and decide which duties are creditable and which duties aren't creditable, and if the position is a mix of both, is it creditable or is it not creditable? So again, trying to clear up that ambiguity and really simplify things. So that is the 4th main part of the bill. Again, that's just a quick sort of overview of kind of where we're going, or where we're hoping to go with AB 1997. And then I'll talk to you about sort of the next steps that we see if and when the legislation passes. So if you go to the next slide. So if the legislation passes, AB 1997, we've put in a backstop date for July 1st of 2027, and that's really to give us time to get used to it, get you guys time to get used to it, and also for our pension solution project, all the things that are happening with Go Live, and then the new file format that's going to be in effect. We are not looking at putting this into effect any earlier than July 1st of 2027. So it's the language specifically in the bill, if you look at it, says no later than July 1st of 2027. And we just want to be transparent. We're not looking to move anything up earlier than that date. So we are looking at the bill going into effect July 1st of 2027, even though you'll notice, again, if it goes through this year, July 1st of 2025, you'll see sort of some of the changes in the actual law book if you look at it, but they will not be in effect until July 1st of 2027. So then we're also working on regulations to further clarify the provisions in AB 1997. So that's something that we're already working on, but obviously aren't ready to share yet until we know that the legislation is going to pass. But just so you guys know, we're also looking at clarifying and tightening up all the regulations to match with the new concepts in AB 1997, provide further clarity on things, and make sure that everything is as simple and as black and white as we can make it. And so that's another thing that we're going to be working on. And then we're also creating a comprehensive training strategy to educate all employers on how to implement AB 1997. So if you read the bill, it's a lot. It's a lot of changes, and we understand that you guys are already dealing with a lot of changes. So we definitely want to be sensitive to that and let you guys know that we are coming up with a comprehensive training strategy. So it's not just going to be this is it, and we'll, give you a circular about it, but then you just go and figure it out yourselves. It's going to be us reaching out and making sure that we offer trainings, that we work with everybody so that we can all feel as comfortable as possible by that July 1st, 2027 date to fully implement the bill and see the changes. Again, the goal being that it will be more simple, less complex for everyone, and more accurate and easy reporting for you guys and for CalSTRS staff as well. So, yeah, that is my time. So thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, I'm free to take them now or in the open forum. And you can also always reach out to our training team or employer services in general with questions as too.
Thank you, Samantha.
Yeah, thank you guys.
No, there's no questions, so we're going to move ahead. So our next presentation is also on legislation, and it's from Joycelyn Martinez-Wade.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be back with you. We'll move to the next slide. As the legislature just returned from their summer recess, they were off for the bulk of the month of July, and they got back on August 5th on Monday. And so it goes through some of the procedural points we're seeing right now. AB 1997, you just got a more in-depth look at the contents of the bill. The bill is currently on the Senate suspense file. My guess is that they'll act on the Senate suspense file on August 15th. So next week on Thursday, their deadline to do that is by the 16th. And as you know, when things go to the suspense file, they have a cost in the Senate of more than $50,000 over time to the general fund. And then the committee will look at all of the bills that have gone to the suspense file and determine which ones they want to move forward, if they can reduce costs on any, and what they want their priorities to be for spending on the legislation from this year. So we'll be waiting with bated breath to see if 1997 moves at that point in time. And a little out of order, but AB 2134 and AB 2901 were up in the Senate Appropriations Committee on Monday, and they moved to the suspense file. So same kind of situation there. And the sick leave bill is creating clarity around sick leave being transferred from one district to the next when an employee moves, and that can happen at any time. Also, if an employee steps away on leave and they come to a new district, the sick leave can be transferred to that employer. For CalSTRS, sick leave would be transferred in days, not hours. And so it's providing clarity around some of those points. And then AB 2901, the pregnancy leave bill, requires 14 weeks, up to 14 weeks of pregnancy leave for employees. And so that would add an additional leave type there. And so again, those three bills are on suspense, and we'll wait to see what happens next week. AB 2770, our housekeeping bill, actually went to the governor before the summer recess started. And so he signed that bill. This bill has to do with making sure that our statute is evergreen for required minimum distributions, which are a requirement at the federal level. So we're taking out some specifics because they keep changing things in Congress. And so we've evergreened our statute in a few places. And then also for permissive service credit purchases and redepositing refunds, we've got some clarity in there around interest and due dates. And so that bill is signed, and not so much impact for employers, but wanted to mention it. And then briefly on the bottom two bills, SB 252 on fossil fuel divestment did not make it out of the Assembly Policy Committee this year. And then HR 82 on repealing the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. That bill's gained more co-authors in Congress, but it has not moved forward yet. There have been a couple hearings on the issue. And so we'll see if there's any action on that. And I see a question from Virginia. We can unmute.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this is the right place where I would ask this question, and I'm going to ask, and if it's not, please let me know. If a CalSTRS member who was currently performing a creditable job like a substitute or a teacher and now moves into a position like a school administrative assistant, do we keep them as CalSTRS members, even though they're not doing a CalSTRS required credential job?
So it's probably a question for someone else to answer, but it sounds like that may be covered by CalPERS. And so then there's a process around that. So I don't know if we want to leave that to the open forum, if Kathleen wants to make a note, or if we want to defer to responding to Virginia at a later date.
Yes, we'll do that. We'll add that to the open forum.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great. Next slide, please. Okay, going back to bills from a couple of years ago that are being implemented now. We obviously talked about SB 765, so you have all the details on that. SB 327, again, more of an CalSTRS member impact as opposed to employer impact, but this is where members would be limited to backdating their service retirement date to 9 months. And so we're looking at this getting implemented with Go Live for Pension Solution. It does have to be in place by January 1st, 2026. So you heard the timelines earlier from John Hammond, and so that would go into effect then for our members. And then next slide, for bills from 2022, we have AB 1667, which Samantha mentioned. And what I wanted to cover here is that the fourth quarterly invoice for employer information overpayments went out to those who have overpayments that are need to be paid back. So that went out on July 1st. And so the next one would come on October 1st, so 3 months from then, because those are coming out quarterly. And then also for the system error side of things, the first billing, if you will, was out there for this July 1st, 2024. And so those invoices went out for employers who are handling 15% of that amount, divvied up by proportionate share contributions. And then the state did transfer from the general fund 85% of that amount. So that seemed to have gone smoothly to get all those out there and to interact with the state on that piece. So, and then that's all I have on legislation. So any questions on legislation? While I wait to see, I'll also mention that after that deadline for the Appropriations Committee that I mentioned on August 16th, then the last 2 weeks of August will be floor session only, unless bills have been amended greatly and they go back to the House of Origin, they need to have a policy committee hearing, but there'll be a mad dash to move all the bills off of the floor and to the governor. And so we will be watching that very closely if those 3 bills that I mentioned earlier move off the suspense file. And then the governor has until the end of September to sign or veto bills. And we'll get the outcomes of all those and come back in November and provide that to you. Okay, next slide, please. I'm going to have the regulations update so we can move to the next slide. We have a few things going on. The updates to the penalties and interest, which we've addressed in previous meetings. We had some changes that were based on some informal stakeholder feedback that were noticed in May for a second comment period of 15 days. We did not receive any comments during that comment period. And so we'll be presenting the language to our board in September. It's toward the end of September to get their approval to submit the regulations to the Office of Administrative Law to go through their process, get them approved and into place. On AB 1667 regulations, we're still working through preliminary rulemaking activities, and we've received some feedback from stakeholders, and we're working on addressing that. And then the board elections regulations, again, has to do with the process around members of the system. If they're going to run for one of the board elected member seats, then how they go through that. So we are still working internally, haven't gone out for stakeholder feedback, but on drafting those regulations. And then gender terms cleanup. This is taking out gender terminology, going for more gender neutral terminology in the regulations. So those changes don't have any regulatory effect. They were posted on our website. They go through a different process because they don't have any substantive effect on the regulations. So those have actually been approved by the Office of Administrative Law and will go into effect shortly. And any questions on regulations? I see one from Shannon.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I just have one question. You had mentioned earlier the SR 1867. And I just wanted to get a clarification on where I would find the updated one from July of 2024.
So I believe that's posted on the Secure Employer website. That's for the post-retirement, for the separation from service exemption, separation from service requirement exemption.
And that was SR 1867, correct?
I don't have the exact number. Don't know if
That would be SR 1897, and it is available on the Secured Employer website. If they don't have access to that website, they're free to email me at the post-retirement email box that was given on our slide, and I'll be happy to send you a copy.
Okay, you said SR 1897.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And that's on the SO website?
That is, yes, under
Thank you.
the reference items.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. I see Talina's hand is up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. On the sick leave bill, are they including charter schools in this amended language?
That's a really good question. Thank you for bringing that up. There were recent amendments and they did remove charter schools from the bill. So good question.
So they're not going to be subject to the mandatory transfer of sick leave?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Of course. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joycelyn. So next up, we have retirement readiness member education, and we have Diana Kibunguchy.
Thank you so much for that. Like Kathleen said, my name is Diana Kibunguchy, and I'm the manager of the program development team in retirement readiness here at CalSTRS. The program development team actually works really closely with the CalSTRS communication division to create various member education tools. So we thought this would be a good time with the start of the new school year that we would take this opportunity and remind you about the different member education and benefit information that is available to our members. So we can go right into the next slide. So the topics that I'm going to review today with you are our career stages and branding, including the iconography that we have developed. We will take a very quick tour of calstrs.com. I will review and do a brief overview of the different services that we have available to members. And then last, we'll look at outreach and how you can bring this content and materials to your districts. So we'll go on to the next slide here. There they are. So you can see them here on the screen. We have early career, we have mid-career, near retirement, newly retired, and part-time educator. So these are the stages that we think cover all of CalSTRS membership. Each career stage has a plant icon associated with it. And so as a member progresses through their career, you will see that the plant is going to grow and or add leaves. And then each career stage has a color associated with it as well. So for instance, if you are speaking to new educators, as it is, again, the start of the school year, you would refer them if they wanted retirement or CalSTRS information to things that are branded green with this smaller plant icon. So you can see the color and the iconology that we've used can be found in many different places, such as our publications, our web pages, and our marketing materials. And so with that, I'll show you some of our marketing materials here on the next slide. Okay, and so we use it in any of our presentations. This is now our branding we use in all of our presentations, in our flyers. So as we market several different offerings, we are making sure that we're using the different colors and the different branding and iconology. So again, if you're talking to a new educator at the start of the year and you're directing them to CalSTRS and their resources that are specific for them, you can let them know that they are part of the early career stage. And to look for the green branded materials. Or if you are going to be putting together any event or wanting to ask us out and you're reviewing our presentations or things that we have available, you can use our branding to help ensure that you are choosing the most appropriate content for your audience. We'll go on to the next slide here. So if you were to go to calstrs.com, there is a lot of great information that could be found on this public-facing website, so much so that it can be a little overwhelming at times. So to help organize the information, we have applied our branding to the career stages. So each of our career stages do have their own separate web page. In that web page, it is going to be a one-stop shop for all things CalSTRS, information or retirement information. So another thing that we found over the last couple of years, as we've been interacting with members, we are starting to hear comments that they are looking for members are making comments saying that they're looking for things to tell them what to do and when. And so as HR specialists or employers, you guys are probably hearing those type of questions as well. So you could direct them to their career stage webpage. What we have done in order to constantly improve this webpage is add a checklist to each stage's webpage. And so these checklists are not new. We've had them in publications, but in an attempt to make them more visible and easy to get to, we have added them to each career stage webpage. So in just a moment, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to specifically get to our checklists. So if you go ahead and click to the next slide, you'll see if you go to calstrs.com, select members at the top, you can select the career stage that you are looking for. For the sake of this example, we will go to early career. And once you go to early career, it will take you to the early career web page. And here is the new tile, which is the early career checklist. For early career members, there are really three main, I don't want to say main, but pivotal points of your career. So less than 1 year of service credit, 1 to 5 years of service credit, or 5 years of service credit. So members can choose where they are in their career, and they'll see a drop down of what they should be doing at that point in time in their career. Okay, so we can go to the next slide here. And so just a brief summary of the services that we have available to members. We offer a variety of different services in different formats. We offer presentations in person, so in the workshop format. We have presentations that can be attended via online, so in webinar format. Our workshops and webinars are geared towards larger audience and cover a variation of topics more at a higher level. We also have benefits planning sessions where members can meet with a CalSTRS benefits specialist, either one-on-one or in a small group setting. Members also have the option to walk into one of our member service centers. So we do have 7 member service centers throughout California that are open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And members can come to our front counter to do several things. Just inquire about retirement information. They can get assistance completing and submitting forms. We also have a dedicated team that administers our CalSTRS Pension 2 program. So for this, all district employees, both classified and certified, have access to our CalSTRS Supplemental Savings Plan, as long as their district does offer Pension 2. So with Pension 2, we do have a full offerings of presentations and separate benefits planning, Pension 2, more so planning sessions specific for this program. So this is a good summary of all the services that we do offer, and we are always improving these services. And so I will go over a couple of the improvements that we are making to our services in the next slide. So first, this is my first steps. This is a new webinar that is launching or going live this August. We are going to be offering this webinar as part of our new educator event later this month. This presentation was created for the early career stage or early career members, but it really is a good presentation, a good starting point for anyone who wants to start learning about their retirement. It's a short 30-minute presentation. It gives a great introduction to what a pension is. It starts the conversation on what their pension or their retirement will cover, and things that they can do, small steps that they can start now to prepare them for the future. Then we will please go to the next slide. Another improvement that we are making is with Pension 2, we have just introduced the member self-scheduling platform. So Pension 2 in the past was really something members were referred to Pension 2, so we did not have the opportunity to schedule members the very first time that we met with them or they showed interest in Pension 2. So we have rolled out a new scheduling system where if a member hears about Pension 2 and they are interested in Pension 2, they can go ahead and advocate for themselves and get online and schedule an appointment and to meet with one of our hybrid specialists. So this really did streamline our appointment bookings, so they can do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year. And we are using the Microsoft Bookings platform for members to be able to go ahead and schedule themselves for an appointment with Pension 2. And we go on to the next slide, please. So most importantly, outreach. We are excited about doing outreach, coming out to your districts if you so will have us. So if you are interested in having a CalSTRS member out, you could ask us to come out to do a presentation. You could ask that your district host a webinar so that we will do these presentations via online, as well as if you just want retirement materials or publications from us. What's on the screen here is a really good pamphlet that we do have available to send to you, really for new educators, that gives a great overview of how your CalSTRS retirement is the benefit of a lifetime. So like it says here, again, we can do outreach on site or we can do it virtually. If you have a contact within CalSTRS and you are interested in outreach, I would encourage you to go ahead and reach out to them and schedule any type of presentation, whether it's on site or virtual. If you do not have a contact, you can email us at externalaffairs@calstrs.com. This is kind of like our intake form. Once we figure out what it is that you're looking for and your location, we will put you in contact with one of our outreach managers who could assist you with that. But with that is everything that I wanted to present today. You could go to the thank you slide, and if there are any questions, I can answer those.
I don't see any, Diana.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to go into the open forum, and we already received one question on the whether or not when someone moves from a position and we are going to, it's a potential ES 372 form when they go from CalSTRS to CalPERS, but we would like to see the specifics of that instance so that we can look at it and make sure instead of just saying fill out that form. So if you could send those details to our employerhelp@calstrs.com, I will be sure to shepherd that through the process and make sure that you get a timely response.
And then we also had
yes.
So we had a question come through the email box about the post-retirement exception for SB 765. And that exemption is only for the 180-day separation from service, not for the earnings limit dollar amount. And with Karen online here, I'd just ask you to speak to that.
Yes, that is correct. That's the SR 1897 is only for an exemption to the 180-day calendar separation from service period. There are no exemptions to the annual limit.
Thank you, Karen.
And I see we have a question for,
Yes, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, so I'm the one that asked the questions about CalSTRS, and I apologize, maybe I didn't specify my question clearly. My question is, if a current CalSTRS member moves to a full-time classified position that normally would be covered by CalPERS, can that person stay on CalSTRS?
You know, CalSTRS membership is by position. And did you?
Yes.
So CalSTRS membership is by position, and moving into what would normally, what sounds like a CalPERS covered position, again, would depend on the individual circumstances of the position itself and their current membership in CalSTRS. So it is something that would need us to take a look at it. There is a, you know, we do allow for that to happen in certain cases, but without the additional specifics, we would want that to come through our employer help box. Does that make sense?
I don't know if I'm still on the microphone. Am I still on the microphone?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, well, I'll send the specifics. And then I have another CalSTRS question. So a teacher retires the last day of school or resigns their job the last day of school, but doesn't complete their CalSTRS retirement until like 2 years later. Will they get a balloon payment from CalSTRS for those 2 years that they were retired and did not apply for CalSTRS? Or does their retirement check begin when they apply for CalSTRS? Does that make sense?
It does. I would rather have someone from service retirement speak to that. I don't know, Karen or Beth Ruggiero, if you want to come up. It depends really, I think, on their retirement date that they choose, and how far back they date their retirement application.
So
You
they
are right.
we can't hear you.
All right, back in action. Sorry about that, guys. So yes, if somebody leaves CalSTRS employment, waits 2 years and decides to backdate their retirement by those 2 years, so no membership, no work has been conducted in between time. Once we process that application, they will get a retroactive payment that will go back to the beginning of that retirement period, as long as the retirement is retroactive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Any other questions? Okay, so next slide. So our next Employer Advisory Committee meeting is Wednesday, November 13th.
And that will be on Zoom, just like these have been. So if we don't have any other questions,
we could be done.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us.
Yes, thank you.